We are super proud to announce that Stay Plugged In is now sponsored by HyperX for our online events for the month of August. Prizes will include a Cloud Stinger wireless headset and a Cloud Stinger wired headset for our Turbo Tuesday tournaments for the first and second winning teams. And then for our Valorant tournaments, which are every other week on Thursdays and Fridays, that will be the Alloy Origins Core Mechanical Gaming Keyboard, HX Red, and the Pulsefire FPS Pro Gaming Mouse, which the keyboard is for first place and the mouse is for second place. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Spincast. Today, we're going into high school esports once again, looking at the program at Carmel High School, Carmel Esports, with Dylan GENTILCORE and NASSIR. Dylan is the director of esports, and NYLE is the League of Legends captain and one of the club admins, and also a rising junior at Carmel High School. So, without further ado, my first question always is: go ahead, introduce yourselves, and tell me a little bit about your past in esports, where your passion started in gaming, and kind of how that led to where you are currently. I'll let you go ahead and go first, Dylan.
Hi, so I really got my start in esports around a decade ago right now, more like 9 or 10 years ago, when I built my first gaming PC. Before that, I was gaming on a Dell laptop, and I was playing RTSs, a lot of Warhammer 40K, things like that. I've been a gamer my whole life. I grew up playing Smash, which I guess you could say really is my start to esports. Smash from Blockbuster on the N64 in the 90s, and then getting it with my GameCube, Melee, and continuing that series. But I was never really a fighting game player. That was a party game for my group. Getting into League of Legends, though, off a simple installation CD from a PC Gamer magazine, that's been a whole journey. I mean, yesterday I played 15 or 16 games of LoL myself. And following that passion, once I got into teaching after graduate school and I started teaching at Carmel High School, I noticed I had a lot of students who were passionate about not only video games, but these competitive esport titles. And my second year of teaching there, I took the plunge. I latched on to a global elite CSGO player and a legend Hearthstone player. And I told the two of them, if you really want to do this thing, we're going to blow it up. We're going to make it a fully fledged program. I want to feature the biggest titles. I want to get our best players, and I want to put together something worthy of the Carmel name. And Carmel is a school known for being a state and national behemoth in virtually every style of competition, whether it's marching band or football. So taking on that, I had some experience coaching the debate team the previous year. I'm still doing that. And that's where we're at with Carmel Esports. 2 years ago, it was a simple 3-person club. We had our first call-out meeting, great success, and now we've ballooned to feature nearly 20 rosters across 10 games and over 100 active Carmel High School players.
Awesome. That's incredible. I always love seeing those really big programs really start to just kind of grow inside them, and that I'm stumbling over my own words. It's the end of the week. But really growing within itself, because it provides that community for the players, right? So many students, especially in the esports space, don't really have a home because they don't like football, they don't like basketball, they don't like band, but they love gaming, they love esports. And then, having a program and a club like yours is awesome, because now they have a community of 100 plus kids with the same interests and the same kind of passions, which is just absolutely incredible. So going ahead and going to you, Niall, explain a little bit of your background, where you started with gaming, and kind of where those passions started.
So yeah, I started casual gaming pretty much in elementary school. I remember my friend talking about this new release game called Halo Reach. And off of there on the Xbox 360, that's where it all began. Me and my friends would play every day, and eventually that stemmed off to Minecraft and all these other Xbox titles. And then one of my friends, when I came to middle school, he begged me for 3 months to download this one computer game on my Dell laptop called League of Legends. And that's where it all began, pretty much. Since then, I've been playing the game very competitively. I'm the League of Legends captain at the school. But besides that, I'm also big into PC gaming on many other titles. I hit top 200 in Brawlhalla, which is a platform fighting game similar to Smash, which I also play for the club. And from that, I've just really found my passion in leading teams, as well as just trying to compete at the highest level that I can.
Yeah, absolutely. Always seeking who to beat next, right? Who to claim that best of the best title from. Absolutely great to see. Kind of, transitioning to my next question, and this is more for you, Dylan, is explain, the size of the club, right? You kind of said it straight up with 100 plus students and the 20 rosters and 10 games, but speak to what those games are, how those rosters functions. Do y'all put on events? What competitions do you play in? And then explain a little bit of what goes on behind the scenes with practice and scheduling and all that kind of great stuff.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there. We started out initially with around 30, I would say 30 core students. Those were my students who were consistently showing up to practice, showing up to meetings, showing up to matches, which is always one of the biggest hurdles when starting out an esports program, right? You're going to get that initial fervor of students who haven't ever been reached out to or latched onto to form a community and be relied upon by others and be held accountable for things and have that sort of indebtment, right? That that's really difficult to foster. We were fortunate, Carmel, massive school of like 5,400 kids.
Mm-hmm.
So getting 30 in the grand scheme of things isn't truly impressive, but for a beginning esports program, we were really happy with that. And we started out with, like I said, core titles, and we wanted to compete in the high school esports league. So those were Hearthstone, League of Legends, and CSGO, because those were like the three expertises we had. I had that Hearthstone player, that CSGO player, and then I had myself.
Mm-hmm.
And outside of that, we then just, I sought out students, I got to know them. That's really one of my strengths. I'm not the best teacher. I don't come up with the most awesome lesson plans, but I do try to get to know these students and how awesome they are at their various things. And I had grand champion Rocket League players who were freshmen. I had these awesome Smash Brother players. I had players who were passionate and great at Overwatch. We have a Grandmaster Overwatch player who competed in contenders at one point, I think in junior high that was. I mean, he told me he was doing this around the freshman year, so 8th or 9th grade, he's competing in contenders. So we have all these brilliant personalities and skill sets to work around. So that's where I started. I looked at what was there, adding on games like Rainbow Six Siege over time, Brawlhalla, something that NYLE is passionate about. And our second year, we held a call out meeting. And I also had been working with other teachers around the state of Indiana who were really getting into esports at the time. And we started our own Indiana High School Esports Network. It's called ISON for short. And the goal there is providing a free, equitable avenue for esports. And that helps the programs get involved because now that barrier of entry is down even more. And that's where our club nearly tripled in size. All of those freshmen and sophomores that I was able to really get to know and build a great coach student player relationship with, they got their friends in and they advertised to other people, and our Smash team got much larger. We were able to form JV and varsity rosters for almost every title. So League of Legends, Overwatch, CSGO, Rainbow Six. We had 4 Rainbow Six teams at one point, 2 on Xbox and 2 on PC. I'm all about supporting as many players, as many titles as it takes. That means there's a lot of hours for me. I was putting in 60-hour weeks most of the school year at the very least. But to me, that's worth it. And that's where I see this thing going. And over time, we'll prune and we'll get this thing more competitive. We're going to have a fixture in the building now. We've got 8 gaming computers that were built by another club I run. I run a PC building club. So having that intersectionality between the two and having that be our base of operations where we can do rigorous tryouts and we can experiment with rosters. We can fine tune the games that we really want to keep and play. And it's one of those things, I'm not going to demand it over time. We had some great Hearthstone players graduate this year. If next year we don't have anyone that wants to play Hearthstone, I'm not going to sit anyone down and force them to practice, right? They're not going to grind dust. But if the people are there and they're willing to put in the time and effort, my philosophy is that I'm going to meet them halfway or more to make sure that they have a platform to compete.
Absolutely. That sounds so incredible. I wish I had that when I was in high school a little bit while ago. That sounds so incredible. And just like I said before, giving them that platform to succeed and really pursue their interests at that competitive level is something great because I feel like there's so much that's kind of born out of that, which we'll get to in a little bit. But my next question is for the player on the call, NYLE. what is this club and all these, you know, rosters and teams kind of give you the platform? You know, what do you really appreciate of, you know, Dylan really providing this at your school and giving you the ability to compete?
I mean, it's obviously an insane amount of effort to put this up, so I'm always grateful for that. But the thing with esports is, we've mentioned before that a lot of these students, they're not involved in other activities. They're not in marching band, they're not in sports. And so seeing these different talents that you wouldn't see before is really impressive, because I'll see these kids around the school and nobody really knows too much about them. Maybe they're introverted, whatever it may be, but you'll come and see them in the club and they're like a whole new person. And that's a really amazing side of esports, because it allows me to get to know a lot of people better than I would before. And if I'm able to get to know more people, I'm able to just generally know more about the entire gaming community as a whole. I know more about Smash than I've ever known before. I used to play exclusively League of Legends, and now I'm knowledgeable on all these different subjects. And with the competition, it definitely inspires me to work harder, as well as inspires me to push my friends harder to work to basically do well in the competition.
Exactly. Yeah, it's something that, I mean, I grew up playing football and baseball, and having that person next to you to drive you is something so great that I feel like you know, a lot of people miss out on, because, you know, they're gaming by themselves or just with one other person at their home. And, you know, that drive might not be there because, you know, you don't have anybody to compete against. But obviously, you know, with a great program with 100 kids, you're like, I want to be better than him. I'm going to try to make each other better, right? Hey, you know, your middle lane might not be as good as mine, so here's a few tips, right? And that's obviously all things we want to see in that esports kind of educational space.
Yeah, and to add on to that,
Yeah.
real fast, one thing I forgot to bring up that's really important here, Niall was talking about seeing what everyone can bring to the table. We also are always expanding our non-player roles. As much as I want to find those players who are passionate about directly competing, there are players who love these games that necessarily don't have any competitive drive in them. They really just want to be involved in some cursory fashion, right? So we've had people join the club exclusively as, or part-time as, graphic designers, as designing our website. We had a student, a junior at the time, Matthew Gardner. He designed carmelesports.com. We have various students running our social media accounts. They're doing our editing for our YouTube videos. That's not me. That's all them. NYLE has been working in the community very hard to try and establish relationships, because a lot of what he's focused on is raising funds for the club and finding advertising partnerships. He was able to get us a great deal on our trophies, as well as provide the funding for the Greyhound Battlegrounds, which is a recurring tournament that he and the other two student admins who I have right now, they're both juniors with NYLE, James Lenos and Nico Zimowicz. They've put together an entire tournament series that we're now planning to run at least 2 times a year. So all of that provides an avenue for these students to show off and form a community around what they're great at, even outside of the game.
Yeah, totally agree there. And that's, you know, something that we do in Charlotte is, you know, we develop these camps and programs where the kids not only come in and play, they cast, they learn how to stream,
Yep.
they learn what content creation looks like. And then they also do the video editing, just like y'all do at your program, which is awesome because it gives them that holistic education, which, you know, moving forward even further into the digital age is so important, right? When employers or colleges kind of look at your portfolio, if your portfolio isn't there in a digital sense with, you know, video editing skills and social media management, then you might just get skipped over straight up. Or, you know, if you have that, it kind of puts you on top of your competition as you, you know, look for those successful routes to that next step. But the Greyhound Battlegrounds tournament, which I think I said that right. If I didn't, I apologize. But now go ahead and talk about what goes into the development of it, because that's awesome as a junior that you're already developing a tournament in esports. So talk about, you know, what the work was that went into it and kind of your approach and processes that kind of brought that to fruition.
Well, it pretty much started off. The club was playing in a League of Legends tournament, and towards the end, we basically had a misunderstandings of the rule set of the tournament. Essentially, we thought we had another chance in the finals. We thought we had another match, but apparently we didn't, and it wasn't very well communicated, and it was really frustrating. So we said, why don't we run our own tournament? Because we're tired of having these, like, I guess you could say, mismanaged tournaments. And we decided, hey, let's take the good things we see from tournaments that we've competed in and remove the bad things and see how great we can make this. So over the summer, we just decided to go at it, and we thought we were going to make a statewide tournament initially, but soon we realized that we'd be able to make this a national tournament. So we held the titles Valorant, League of Legends, Smash, and Rocket League, and we had over 200 players. It took a lot of planning. I was personally a part of the financial side. I was reaching out to different local businesses, trying to get sponsorships on our stream. We had Talk to Tucker was one of our major sponsors that helped us fund the tournament. We had to design the stream overlay as well. So we had their company logos on the stream, as well as our own overlays representing the game scores and all that, which was thanks to our graphic designers. And I know Nico Zimowicz, he mainly focused on managing the tournament itself. So he built the tournament page, all the brackets, and he basically helped the whole tournament run. So it was basically using each one of our own specialties and just combining them together to make this giant tournament.
Awesome. That's absolutely incredible, and I know I love to see that when that happens, because you're already making those really mature decisions of like, hey, I'm really good at this, you're really good at this, and you're really good at this. Let's combine our skills and really develop a great event in that holistic fashion, completely all the way through. So that's great. Dylan, do you have anything to add to that? Any, experiences or observations that you had when you were watching them or maybe helping them develop this tournament?
I've gotten a lot of experience with these students at Carmel over the past 3 years, and one thing I've learned is that if you facilitate the places they can go, it's absolutely insane, right? So he says over the summer. What he really means is during the last 3 weeks of school leading up to finals, we actually put on the tournament Memorial Day weekend right before finals week, and they put together the entire thing in 3 weeks, from moment of conception all the way to a 40-hour 3-day tournament that was multi-streamed across social media, YouTube, and our Twitch channel. The VOD is on YouTube. We did a whole series of player spotlights from our various team captains, as well as some of our seniors. We did a recap video of highlights post-tournament wise. We were constantly advertising. Like I said, we had students from across the country, coast to coast, competing in this thing, and it was a blast. I spent most of my time running the stream from my personal setup and doing casting, but at every opportunity I had multiple students, whether they were competing or not competing that weekend, coming in and casting with me. So you probably heard around 6 to 10 different Carmel students at least coming in and doing the cast. And there were a lot of times where I had the great opportunity of saying, okay, I've got these 3 Super Smash Brother players here. They're all going to cast. I'm going to sit back and I'll chime in once we hit the commercial break, right?
Mm-hmm.
And having that opportunity to just sit back and watch them be excellent, that was a blast. And I always look forward to doing more of that in the upcoming years, right? Because I only think this product is going to get more and more polished. We plan on doing this live from our lab in the upcoming years, having the students be even more invested in the broadcasting side of it, with the casting, with the live video production, those different elements. So taking something, knowing how much the effort they put in to make sure it's quality at the beginning, and then having in my mind where it could possibly go, I think there's a lot of potential there.
Absolutely. I always see that potential, especially in the esports space, because, I keep saying it, but there's so much passion and dedication in the esports space, because, once you get hooked in these games, it's like, absolutely, I want to get better. I want to get better. And when you have that mentality with that passion behind it, it kind of drives you to that success, to that level of success that you saw firsthand. And then, you give them that platform and give them a little bit of coaching or education in some of these topics, then they just eat it up and, spit it back out at the next level up, and the next level, so on and so forth. Until before we know it, they're pros, right?
Right. The attention span and the attention to detail is insane. We're talking about players that, like any other person who wants to be great at something, they will focus in, they will put in thousands of meticulous hours honing their craft.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that they can transfer to anything. If I tell one of them, that you can do this other thing you're passionate about, they will approach it with that same level of commitment. And you will see them work at it and put out something better and better each and every time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, along those same lines, I heard a great analogy from the director of esports at Oklahoma University, Mike Aguilar. Basically said all the dedication and passion that he sees at the collegiate level and some at the high school level drives, the skills of communications and time management and problem solving and critical thinking and the strategic development of all the strats that go into these very complex games, and balancing all of that under high stress with a limited time with your peers and your teammates. You only ever see that one other place in the world, and that's like high-end military operations. And like those guys are touted as experts in communications and logistics and strategy and all that kind of stuff, which is the same thing in esports. And we can take these skills, the students can take these skills and go to college and develop them even more in fields within the esports industry, in software development or video editing or graphic design, and then basically infiltrate any industry in the world with that if they don't want to stay in esports for whatever reason. But it's still applicable across the entire board. So it's awesome to see, just starting that platform now so they're ready to succeed in the future. Kind of going to my next question, looking at the program specifically, and we got really broad there with the national competition. Talk to us, and this is kind of for both of you, is what does practice look like? What kind of structure is there? How much, do you do VOD review or any kind of, constructive criticism sessions? Just anything, take us through like what one day of practice looks like, leading up to a big time competition.
So I can tell you what it's looking like broadly because of so many different rosters, where I want it to go, and then NYLE can give you his experience. For me, like I said, as much time as I spend playing these games, I spend probably just as much, if not more time, listening to all these different podcasts and shows. Like, there's hardly a time. If I'm not doing something that requires full attention, I have an esports show of some sort playing in my ear, and I'm listening to professionals, usually around League of Legends. So, like, I was just taking a shower and I was listening to The Dive, and that's professional casters who work directly for Riot talking about the pro meta and how it's developing and how those coaches are working in their scene with those players and those strengths and weaknesses, right? And esports is a very self-driven activity. In so many games, or how should I say, sports, you're going to have a lot of coach telling player what to do, player executing, right? But in esports, I feel like it's not so rote. There's a lot more of player expression and player agency. I think it's more akin to something like basketball, especially at the pro level. In the NBA, we see a lot of basketball teams that, while we do have some great coaches with some great schemes, we know it's a players' league. That's directly what people call it, a players' league, right? And that's how esports is. So in the same way people joke around, okay, when you're on a team with LeBron James, it's like LeBron James is the coach. That's really how esports is too, for the most part. Like, if I have a great player, like, I'm probably never going to be as high ranked as a coach. And this applies to almost every coach at every level in the esports world. You're almost never higher ranked or as high ranked as your best player in an ideal scenario, right? So working with those players, facilitating them conversing, getting them to focus on their own skill set and honing that, getting them to communicate with one another. That's where a lot of our practice goes. We try to build in at least a 2 or 3 days of formal practice per week. Sometimes that involves us, going in the discords or me communicating with other schools to try and find scrim partners. Sometimes that's trying to get them to just play solo queue or duo queue with one another in various games, or in games that can facilitate it, queuing up as a full team. And then outside of that, we do have days in the building that are VOD reviews. So for Overwatch and League of Legends especially, those are great VOD review days, but we do it for Rainbow Six. There are practices for Rainbow Six where all they do is they pull up maps and they literally just talk about strats on those maps. And we had a freshman this year who was our highest ranked player, and he was their IGL, and he would come up with these strats and he would break them down and cover all the different points of entry and the angles that players would hold, all of that sort of stuff, right? And from there, you have your players that have their dedicated roles, and shooters, you have people who are making call outs, and then you have fraggers, right? And these MOBA style games or games that are played around classes, you have your players who are going to play more of a carry role and then more of a supportive role, and then everything in between. We have that sort of same situation going on here. I'm working with the players, asking them questions mostly. In League of Legends, I'm a bit more hands-on just because that's my game of forte, and I can go in and I can say, okay, everyone, let's stop right here. What went wrong? And then hearing from them and then talking about, okay, this is what we should have done here. This is what item build should look like. This is how we should have approached this fight. This is what Baron Dragon setup should look like, things like that. But for the most part, I really do try and turn it over to them. That way they have that sense of agency and control over the situation. Obviously, as we move more and more into having a structured setting with every program, this is the goal, that you get them in person in a practice facility of some sort, whether that's a room with 5 computers in it, or it's a full-fledged lab where you have like 20 or something. You want to have the players in there. You want it to be as daily as it can be to provide that infrastructure that they need. That always helps us when we have that set schedule, and then getting them to work through that, have built-in VOD review times, screen times. In the future, I would even like to add a physical component. I would like to get us going on walks or runs, getting in the weight room occasionally, because total body wellness is a huge factor in esports. You're seeing this at the highest level, but it hasn't really made its way down as much as it should. Like you said, you played sports in high school. I was a varsity athlete in high school. When you take care of your body, you're performing at your best, and that doesn't just come down to your physical performance, but mentally it has a huge effect on the game.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, one of my passions is the mental health and the physical health and that balanced approach, right? You don't need to go run a marathon, right? That's, more for marathon runners. But that balance is so important, because when you look at the medical research, if you're physically active, it increases blood flow, and that really helps, cognitive functions, right? So when you're in these real time, high stress situations in game, your brain's still functioning at its full capacity, right? There's not certain areas shutting itself off, which is super in depth and super biological. But the physical health is so important to enable the success when you're under these high stress situations. So obviously, the stress and mental health, you have to be able to learn how to manage stress, right? Which for high school students is incredibly difficult, right? They're high school students, so being a coach and having that dedicated approach is awesome, because giving them those skills so you can help facilitate, like you were saying, to give them their best potential, or help them reach their best potential by having that balanced approach. Absolutely phenomenal. Now, go ahead and give us that player perspective of what practice looks like on that day-to-day kind of perspective / approach.
Yeah, so I'm the League of Legends captain, so I ran a lot of the League of Legends practices. And in a way that League of Legends pretty much differs from a lot of other games, like for Call of Duty or Rainbow Six Siege, you can go into an aim trainer all day and you can practice that way. But for a lot of League of Legends, there's not really many things that you can just drill repeatedly. A lot of it is experience and just kind of like adapting to the situation and knowledge. So because of that, our practices were more free flow than probably other games. We had a lot of VOD reviews. We had a lot of times where we would play together, but a lot of it was just kind of finding our team's identity. So we had a player, his name was Tamir, and he was pretty much our star carry for the team. He would play these high damage characters, and basically a lot of the resources of our team were focused into how can we make Tamir do the best that he can possibly do. So a lot of times during our VOD reviews and things like that, it's a lot of different factors to consider, because there's not just one right answer, especially in League of Legends. So a lot of our practices we'd pretty much just sit in a Discord call, or just like sit around a projector and just pretty much discuss our different opinions. And that led to that's pretty much how we grew as a team. It was through our practice was mainly just discussions and pretty much trying to find how we can make our team work the best because of the players that we have. It's not just, oh, how can we make our players do this one specific objective, because that might not work for every team. It was a lot about finding what works for us personally.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such an incredible, or I think an incredibly overlooked kind of component of esports from the outside perspective, right? There's so many different team identities, even more so than like football, right? Where you have your kind of running teams or your passing teams. Some of those, West Coast versus East Coast offensive schemes within the game. But in esports, in my experience playing Rainbow Six, there's so many different ways to play as a team. You can be super focused on enabling one person that's extremely good, especially in a MOBA game where you can have like that carry that has that high DPS and that high damage kind of builds over time. You can have, in FPSs and the shooter games, you can have the, kind of trident kind of approach that I've seen a lot at the pro level. Rainbow is, you have 3 really great entry players that can, really kind of frag well off each other, and then 2 good support players that carry the utility and really take the strats on their backs. So really great, kind of see that firsthand experience in yourself, Niall, really being able to start to identify that and then practice that and also execute on that as well. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. I think we are over the time, which is absolutely fine. I think we've all had a fantastic discussion about esports at the high school level. And I'll leave you both with one last short question. In both of your different experiences in the same kind of field in high school esports, what do you think is the biggest thing that either needs to change or be improved on to kind of bring high school esports to that next level? And I know this is super broad, but I always like to end with this. It's just, what is that one thing you're like kind of just immediately comes to mind? It's like, wow, if this was a little bit better, this changed in this way, it would bring high school esports to being, it's kind of a little bit all over the country and more local regions, to kind of be like a national kind of phenomenon where, like football or basketball, where so many people go and watch and so many kids want to play. What do you think that is? I'll let you go first, Dylan.
Oh, wow. This is a loaded question. Wow. One thing, I honestly, looking at the way things have developed around me, it really is just like, you have to commit. I just want to see program, and especially like those teachers and faculty, administration, like you just have to all in. You really do. You have to provide that sense that you are going to be there for the kids no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to do what's best for them. I've done that, and that's why the program is where it is. There wasn't anything special I did outside of that, and maybe that's just a testament to the students I have. But I feel like if you take the time, you put in the hours at first to get to know these students, reach out to them, form that community, that's going to be the ties that bind you together. And if we can do that all around the country, we're really going to start to see this thing flourish.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think we both agree that giving that community, especially for students when they're so young, is so important. It helps on, not only just exposing them to something they love, but, social development and developing kind of relationships and learning how to interact and be part of a team, which so many kids miss out on if they don't play traditional sports, which nothing wrong. I think esports is just as good, if not better, in my opinion. Now, what is that one thing for you, though, that really kind of helps high school esports itself kind of jump to that next level?
I mean, this is probably the hardest thing out of all of it to change, but from a student perspective, at least, there's a large stigma around it, right? So I know, like, we've won like national titles from our personal esports club,
Mm-hmm.
but simply because it's esports and the stigma around it, even if we're national champions, people can still just not even bat an eye. And that's one of the big issues as like a student, I guess, because I mean, we have 110 people in the club, but I guarantee you there's 5, 10 times that many students that actually play games. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a lot of them don't want to join because of the stigma, and a lot of people, it's a lot harder to find support from parents, especially due to that stigma of it just being almost a time waster. So if that's like the one biggest thing that could change, it'll definitely skyrocket, and you can see that in China and South Korea how it's more popularized there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, once we overcome that hump where people stop looking at it as, oh, it's a time waste, you're just playing a game. But interesting enough, like, that's not how people look at it for like baseball or basketball, football, which for the vast majority of people that play that at the high school level, like, you're never going to go pro. Like, most of them won't even play at a high level in college. But with esports, you're developing so many more skills, right? With video editing, graphic design, casting, production, streaming, content creation, on and on and on, and applying that to software development and so much more.
Yeah, virtually every extracurricular. I mean, I spent 9 years doing band. I'm not a professional musician, but I'm better for it, right?
Exactly.
And that's the attitude that we need to have with these things, that we can't just look at the activity of playing a video game and saying, well, video game's bad. like anything, if you do it in a self-destructive manner, or you're not taking in moderation, or you're not putting in mindfulness, it's going to be bad for you. But if we can say we can bring these kids together, we can provide them a safe and productive avenue to try these things out, to excel, to build friendships and communities, and build great habits, those skills that transfer, then it's a worthwhile endeavor, regardless of whether or not it translates directly into a salaried position.
Yeah, absolutely. They couldn't have put that more well said than you just did there. Absolutely great piece of advice there, and a great outlook, which I hope, the mainstream media kind of catches on to sooner than later. But unfortunately, we are out of time. We have gone over our, proposed time limit, but absolutely more than happy to keep talking with y'all. But one last thing, go ahead, plug yourselves, plug Carmel Esports, tell the audience where we can find y'all on, any social media or Twitch or YouTube or on and on.
Right. So you can find us virtually everywhere that's relevant. We're on Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram at Carmel_esports. You can also go directly to carmelesports.com, and that has access to all of the information about our program, our players, and it has links to all of our social media. You can find us on YouTube at Carmel Esports. So check us out. We have the Greyhound Battlegrounds. We're always looking to expand that, and we have a Discord for it that will be expanding over time and forming more of a community there as we try to get programs from all around the country to join, and also just get viewers and families involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone, go check them out. Obviously, one of the biggest, from what I've been exposed to, I think y'all one of the biggest, if not the biggest, high school esports programs, maybe competing over there in that California kind of West Coast. They're kind of real massive over there, but definitely one of the biggest over in the Midwest and the East Coast for sure. So everyone, keep up to date with them. Obviously, I think there's gonna be a lot of great, promising stuff coming from y'all as you continue to grow and really, solidify that high school esports in your region. So once again, thank y'all both for taking the time to sit down with me and stay plugged in on, just discussing high school esports and how we think it can become better over time. Obviously, it's the next big thing. People always say that. I already think it is the next big thing. It's just a question of, okay, how do we make it bigger than, football and soccer, which kind of like the last two titans to tackle, which I think surely it will. It's just a question of when, not if. But tell all our viewers and listeners, thanks for staying the entire time. Stay healthy and stay happy, as do you two as well in the current pandemic. Make sure you take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and ultimately stay plugged in.